and welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wanderer. Today I am here to do the Yes Chef tag. So the Yes Chef tag is an original tag created by Bandy's Books, and it's a tag all about food in literature, favorite food writing, favorite recipes from books, all those good things. And I was tagged to do this tag by Dia from Novel Idea, so thank you very much for the tag, and I'm excited to answer these questions. So the first question is, have you ever read a book about or written by a chef, and if so, which ones, and did you enjoy it? And when I was thinking about this, I realized it's a little bit of a gap in my reading life. I actually haven't read very many books written by chefs or about chefs. The only one that I could kind of come up with was Relish, My Life in the Kitchen, which is a graphic novel by Lucy Knisley. And Lucy Knisley has written a number of graphic novels kind of chronicling different periods of her life. And so I picked this up because I had read some of the other graphic novels that she'd written about her study abroad experience, about getting married, and then this one is kind of a bit of a childhood memoir because both of her parents were chefs, and so she grew up in the kitchen, so to speak, and then it kind of follows through different favorite recipes and food memories from her life. So I did really enjoy this book, which makes me wonder why I haven't written up more food-specific nonfiction or fiction about cooking and chefs. But I don't think there are any other books kind of in this genre that I've read. I might be forgetting one, but I really don't think I've read very much about this, and now I am thinking that that is an area that I'd like to rectify, and I would really love to read more books in this subgenre. So if you have recommendations, I would be very curious to hear about them in the comments. I have been meaning to read some of Anthony Bourdain's books because I did really love watching Parts Unknown, where he would travel to different areas of the world and kind of experience local cuisine, and I love that combination of travel and cooking. So I have wanted to read some of his nonfiction, particularly the book published after his death, World Travel: An Irreverent Guide. I have seen lots of my friends picking up and saying is good, so that is definitely an author whose food-related writing I would love to pick up sooner rather than later. Then question number 2 is, do you notice food descriptions in books? Why or why not? And absolutely I do. Yes, 100% I notice when there is excellent descriptions of food in books I'm reading. But when I was thinking about the answer to this question, a lot of the books that were coming to mind were childhood favorites and like children's fiction. So it kind of got me wondering, is there more descriptions of food in children's books than in adult fiction, or do I just remember these descriptions more vividly from children's books, or perhaps because a lot of my very favorite children's books I reread a lot as a child, so those memories are maybe more ingrained in my mind because I've read those books like 5 to 10 times, whereas a lot of adult fiction I just read once. So I'm not sure why, but I definitely do notice good food writing, and a lot of my favorite descriptions of food happen to come from children's books. So that leads into question 3, what book have you read that had the best food descriptions? And so there's a couple that came to mind, particularly children's books. The first is A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And there's 2 scenes in particular from this book that have stuck with me ever since I first had this book read aloud to me and then in subsequent rereads. There's one scene where Sarah finds some money on the ground and goes into a bakery to buy a bag of hot buns, and the descriptions of kind of the smells of these fresh, warm buns in the window of the shop, and then when she goes in and receives them and the way they're kind of warm in her hands. That is a food description that always seemed so vivid to me and really made me want, I don't know why, I always imagined them as being hot cross buns. I don't think they are hot cross buns. I think they were just warm, like normal bread rolls. But I loved that description. And then of course, towards the end of the book, the feast in the attic that is spread by her anonymous benefactor, when she's eating soup and muffins and all kinds of tasty food. That is just such a beautiful food memory from a book, and it's definitely augmented in my mind by the absolutely aesthetically stunning scene in the 1995 movie, which is one of my all-time favorite movie scenes. Then I also remember there being so many good descriptions of food in Enid Blyton books. Particularly, I loved the Adventure series and the Famous Five, and in both of those books there's basically non-stop afternoon tea and picnics. In the adventure books particularly, there's a character, Lucy Ann, who every time they're eating a picnic or a snack outside, she always says food always tastes nicer in the outdoors, and to this day whenever I am eating food outside I think of that quote. So that is like a very cemented childhood memory of food in books. There's one book in particular which was my favorite, The Valley of Adventure, and in that book they're in this kind of remote valley trying to fend for themselves, and they end up living in this cave behind a waterfall, and they find a stash of tinned food in like a barn, I think, or a little outbuilding on some farm, and move this tinned food into their cave. And even though, like, looking back as an adult, like eating cold tinned food is really not that appealing, for some reason that description of them finding and eating this tinned food has really stuck with me. And then another childhood favorite that has excellent food writing that I remember is The Swallows and Amazon books by Arthur Ransome. In the first book in particular, they are staying on this little island in the middle of the lake, and they have to row to the local farm to get their morning milk and eggs, and just the descriptions of them preparing breakfast over the campfire is such a wonderful image. And then they always drank ginger beer, which they called grog, and growing up, in my mind, ginger beer was like the most incredible drink because of the way that they described it and how excited these children were to have ginger beer. So in my mind, I was like, this stuff must taste amazing. And it wasn't until I was an adult and traveling through the UK that I got like proper British ginger beer for the first time, and I was shocked by how strong it was. Like, it's so gingery, it almost hurts drinking it. And it was kind of like, is this really what they were so excited to be drinking? Because I was imagining something like even better ginger ale, which is quite mild. At least in Canada, our ginger ale is almost just like a Sprite or 7-Up with a little bit of a gingery flavor, and then I was shocked by just how strong ginger beer was. But the characters in Swallows and Amazon are always drinking ginger beer, and so that is a drink that I tried because of reading it in so many British children's books growing up. And then one of the adult fiction books that I thought of when I was thinking through kind of some of my favorite food descriptions is a more recent read, and that is the Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. And this book is set in Japan, and we're following this young girl as she is trained to be a geisha. And so there is wonderful descriptions of Japanese food and different types of sushi that definitely had me craving a visit to my local sushi restaurant. And there's also a very pivotal scene where our main character eats a shave ice with, I think it was plum syrup or cherry syrup on top, and that is kind of a key scene in the book, but it was also just described the shave ice so beautifully. So then question number 4 is, have you ever been inspired by a book that wasn't a cookbook to prepare a specific food or meal? And I do actually have a good answer for that, and that is the Mitford books by Karon. So starting in 2021, I was a co-host along with Kate Howe, Angie from Literary Labours, and Rainey from Rainy Day Reads we did a read-along of the entire Mitford series by Karon. And as part of that, we thought it would be fun if we also cooked a recipe to kind of discuss, share, and eat on the live stream where we were talking about our thoughts about that month's book. So there actually is an entire Mitford cookbook, and so we would just pick a recipe from that books section of the cookbook and prepare it. The Mitford books are set in the southern part of the United States, and so it gave me a chance to try some southern cooking styles and recipes that I'd never had before, and then also kind of southern twists on recipes that I was already familiar with. So some of the things I made were cucumber sandwiches, deviled eggs, cornbread, and then there's this one recipe that comes up again and again throughout the series, and that is the orange marmalade cake. And for one of the characters, that's kind of her staple when she wants to give someone a Christmas or birthday gift, when she's baking for a fundraiser, when someone's like sick or something bad happens, she'll bring them an orange marmalade cake. They raffle it off to raise money for different charity events. And so this orange marmalade cake almost takes on its own character throughout the course of the books. So it was really exciting for the final live show, for the final book in the series. I made orange marmalade cake cupcakes, and it was really, really fun to finally taste this recipe that so many of the characters had been raving about throughout the books, and to kind of bring the books to life in a whole new way. Then question number 5 is, do you have a favorite cookbook? And I've got 2 of my favorites to share. So I am vegetarian, and I've been vegetarian for more than a decade now, I think. Yeah, more than a decade. My cookbooks are all vegetarian cookbooks. So my very favorite cookbook is the Oh She Glows cookbook by Angela Liddon. You can tell it's well loved because it's like falling apart at the seams. And I'm actually going through this cookbook with a group of friends, and we're actually cooking through this entire cookbook. So I had already loved so many of the recipes, and now I'm getting to try some of the recipes that I hadn't already picked up. And literally every recipe in this book is basically a hit. It's one of the only cookbooks and one of the only recipe authors where I will like double a recipe before I've even tried it, because I'm just confident that I'm gonna like it. She has a blog, and that's kind of where her recipes started, and I have cooked many of the recipes off of her blog. And then I think she has 3 cookbooks out now. I have the first 2, and I just love the recipes from her cookbooks. I find sometimes vegetarian cookbooks have lots of like really weird ingredients that you don't necessarily have already in your pantry or in your easily accessible in your grocery stores, but I find most of the Oh She Glows recipes are pretty reasonable in terms of like not having too many ingredients and not having ingredients that are that hard to source. Some of my favorite recipes from this have been the portobello fajitas, the empowered noodle bowl with the Thai peanut dressing, the strawberry mango guacamole is such a nice summer dip. The pumpkin pie smoothie is like one of my go-to fall breakfasts. And then these peanut or almond butter chocolate chip cookies are my very favorite vegan cookie recipe, and I've made it for a lot of people who really, really like them too. So that is the Oh She Glows cookbook, and that's my very favorite cookbook. And then my other vegetarian cookbook that I cook from fairly frequently, but not as frequently as this one, is the Global Vegetarian Cookbook, which is by Troth but also includes kind of snippets that people submitted from all over the world. I really love the format of this book. So it has, this is one of my favorites. I've marked it with a chocolate wrapper. This is Dutch pea soup, but it has kind of a little blurb by someone who is Dutch and has cooked this recipe a lot, and kind of gives a little bit of the history of this recipe and why it's popular. But I just really love this book. Has recipes from all over the world. So we've got like North Africa, we've got Britain, Malaysia, Italy, and I really like, I've made the pea soup quite a bit. I've made butternut squash curry. Another one that I really liked was the tom kha Thai soup. And then this mushroom stroganoff recipe is also my go-to for a vegetarian stroganoff. So that is my other favorite cookbook. Question number 6 is, if you could share a meal with one author, dead or alive, who would it be? And I had to think long and hard about this question, but ultimately I have decided that I would love to have a proper English high tea with Jane Austen. Surprise, surprise. But particularly I would love to talk to her about where she wanted Sanditon and the Watsons to end. Those are her 2 unfinished books that I read. I read Sanditon in the 2021 Jane Austen July, and then I read the Watsons in the 2022 Jane Austen July, and I'm so curious about where she wanted those characters and those plot lines to go, and it makes me sad that we will never know the answer to that. So that would be what I would love to chat with her about. Of course, I would love to talk to her about all the different movie adaptations of her work and kind of which ones she likes best and what she thinks of, you know, how famous she has become and what she thinks of kind of the cult of personality that is around her and her books now. But specifically, I would love to talk to her about those 2 unfinished works and find out where she was going to take those characters, because both of those books, I really loved the fragments that we have of the beginning, and I would have loved to see those books finished. So that is my answer. I would love to have a proper English high tea with Jane Austen. And then question number 7 is, if you had 24 hours to live and you could only eat 1 meal and read 1 book, what would you eat and what would you read? Again, this was a really hard question to come up with an answer for. There's so many meals that I love and so many books that I love, but I think I'm going to go with vegetarian sushi, because that is one of my favorite meals that I'm not able to really cook for myself. So when I get to choose where we're going for date night or for my birthday or something, I'll always choose to go to the sushi restaurant. My go-to order is the inari pockets, some tempura sweet potato roll, avocado roll, cucumber roll, and sometimes I'll also get the vegetarian dumplings. So I think that would be kind of my main meal, maybe with some summer rolls with peanut sauce. It's not really at the sushi restaurant, but if I was making my own menu, I think for an appetizer before, I would have some summer rolls with peanut sauce. And then for dessert, I would have our family's traditional sour cream chocolate cake, birthday cake recipe, because it is just so delicious. And again, it's one of those recipes that are a treat that I don't get very often. And then for what book I would want to read, it would kind of depend on, if I was in the middle of a book that I was really enjoying, I would definitely want to finish that. But if I wasn't in the middle of anything gripping or was in between reads, I would definitely want something nostalgic and comforting. So for example, Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery, or one of the Stuart McLean short story collections. These are both books that I have read and reread many times and are very comforting and nostalgic for me, and ones that I can just kind of relax into and not have to think about very much when I'm reading, and just enjoy that cozy hug feeling that I get when I return to these titles. So those are my answers to the Yes Chef tag, and all that is left is question number 8, which is to tag some people. And so I thought I would tag my Mitford read-along co-hosts, because we did discuss the food in the Mitford books many times in our live shows. So I'm tagging Kate Howe, Angie from Literary Labours, and Rainey from Rainy Day Reads. And of course, if anyone else is watching this video and wants to answer the questions in their own video, consider yourself tagged by me. The creator of this tag, Bandy's Books, has kindly made this tag into a giveaway as well. So anyone who makes a response tag video before February 20th will be entered in a giveaway for a gift certificate to a bookstore of your choice. So that is a fun little incentive to an already fun tag. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book and eating a good meal. Bye.